Last week we spent a ton of time talking about exponential and logarithmic functions. We even talked about some properties for how to rewrite exponential functions into logarithms and vice versa. And this week we're going to look at some additional properties and review some that we learned last week. So the first one, the product property, and the second, the quotient property, are brand new. So let's start with the one that we already know, the power property. We use this quite a bit in our last week's lessons because remember, if we had, and quite often we would have log base b of b to the x or something like that, and we said, hey, let's pop that x out front, and so it was actually x times log base b of b. What we didn't talk about is that those bases don't have to be the same. What's going to happen is this log base b of b before turned into 1, so it was just x times 1. That was a bad x. But this is saying, hey, it's okay if you have log base 3 of 8 to the x. Then I can rewrite that with the x out front times log base 3 of 8. So this is going to be helpful, again, using that product or the power property. So now let's look at the two new properties, and this is going to be helpful in each direction. So we're writing it in one direction, but remember, we could also go from expanded to condensed. The next two videos are going to look at expanding logarithmic functions or condensing them, writing them as a single logarithm, and that's where these two are definitely going to come into play, and as well as the power property. So the product property says if you have a common base and you have a log of two things, so let's say log base 4 of 2x, I can write that as log base 4 of 2 plus log base 4 of x. Now you might be saying, why would I possibly do that? Well, log base 4 of 2 is something I can evaluate. 4 to the 1/2 power is 2. So my answer there would be 1/2. Log base 4 of x I can't do anything about, but I could then, this would be my simplified form because I could simplify one part of that. And again, if I had this written out, I could go from this to this as well. Same thing for quotient, so if I'm dividing instead of multiplying, then I'm subtracting instead of adding, but it's really the same concept. So let's look at some practice together. We'll start with a product property, which says if you've got things that you're multiplying, you can rewrite them expanded form with a plus in between. So this would be log base 4 of 4, which obviously would be nice because we can simplify that to 1, plus log base 4 of a plus log base 4 of b. So that would be expanded form. My next step would of course be to simplify. Same thing for natural log, it doesn't change, it's the same rule. Natural log of 5 plus natural log of e, and natural log of e is something that we could reduce. Now let's look at the quotient property. The quotient property is like the product property, except we're going to subtract instead of add. So log base 2 of the numerator minus log base 2 of the denominator. And again, this is something we would be able to reduce. Next one, natural log of the numerator minus natural log of the denominator. Make sure you write that x minus y in parentheses. Last one, we're using the power property, and remember the power property just says take your exponent, pop it out front. So we have 10 times log base 5 of x. Or we have this, this one's a little trickier. This is the natural log of x squared and then the third root. So I'm going to rewrite that as x to the 2/3 because remember, in case we haven't done that in a while, the top number is the exponent and the bottom number is the index. We probably reviewed that fairly recently, but just in case you've forgotten, I would write that as the natural log of x to the 2/3, which means that I could rewrite this as 2/3 times the natural log of x, because I would take the exponent and pop it out front. Here are some similar practice for you to try on your own. So go ahead and try these 6 questions and press play to see how you did. So again, looking at my first example, I'm looking at the product property. So log base 3 of 9 plus log base 3 of x. And if you wanted to get really crazy, you could say 3 to the second power is 9, so that's 2. 2 plus log base 3 of x. I didn't ask you to go that far, so if you stopped right here, you're just fine. Other one, natural log of 5 plus natural log of x. Nothing can really be reduced there, because we would only reduce if it turned into a nice whole number. Like if I said natural log of e, you would say that's 1, and you replace it with 1. Quotient property means use subtraction instead. Log base 5 of 5x minus log base 5 of 4 and natural log of e to the 4x minus natural log of 2. Keep in mind that this guy I could continue further because of the power property, and I would say this is 4x times the natural log of e minus the natural log of 2, and then hopefully we can all see that the next step would be to turn that into a 1, and so you can see where we're headed with this. Last one, the power property. Again, just take that power, pop it out front, so 4 times, not the natural log, 4 times log base 2 of x, and 5 times the natural log of x.